In a quiet little neighborhood, on a street lined with identical houses, lived an elderly woman named Mrs. Eleanor. Every single evening, without fail, as the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Eleanor would pull her old wooden rocking chair up to the window right beside her front door. She'd sit there, her hands folded gently in her lap, her eyes fixed on the road, waiting. Her neighbors all knew her story. They'd see her silhouette in the fading light and a wave of sadness would wash over them. They knew who she was waiting for. It had been years since her children last visited. At first, the visits were frequent. Her son, David, and her daughter, Sarah, would bring their families over every Sunday. The house would be filled with laughter, the smell of Eleanor's famous roast chicken, and the pitter-patter of her grandchildren's feet. Those were the days Eleanor lived for. But as time went on, life got in the way. David got a big promotion that demanded more of his time. Sarah's kids got older and their weekends filled up with sports and social events. The weekly visits became monthly, then dwindled to just holidays, and eventually, they stopped altogether. The phone calls became shorter, less frequent, until they were just hurried, "I'm okay, how are you?" exchanges before a click and then silence. But for Eleanor, nothing had changed. In her heart, it was still Sunday, and her family was just running a little late. Every evening, she would shuffle into her kitchen around 5 o'clock. She'd tie her apron, the one with the faded sunflowers Sarah had given her for Mother's Day a decade ago, and she would start cooking. Not just a small meal for one, but a feast. She'd prepare a whole roast chicken, just the way David liked it, with crispy skin and tender meat. She'd mash a big pot of potatoes, adding extra butter for her grandson, Tim. She'd bake a batch of chocolate chip cookies, Sarah's favorite, filling the small house with a sweet, hopeful aroma. She'd set the dining table with her best china, laying out 4 extra plates, 4 sets of silverware, and 4 glasses. Everything was always ready, waiting for the sound of a car pulling into the driveway. After the food was cooked and the table was set, she would move to her rocking chair by the door. She'd watch as her neighbors returned from work, as kids played in their yards, as the streetlights flickered on one by one. She'd wait and she'd listen. Every car that turned onto her street would make her heart leap with anticipation. Was that them? Was this the night they'd finally come home? But each time, the car would drive past, and her shoulders would slump just a little. As the hours passed and the night grew dark and quiet, she would sigh, a soft, weary sound. She would then carefully wrap each dish in foil, placing the feast into her refrigerator. Maybe tomorrow, she would whisper to the empty house before heading to bed. The food would be eaten by her over the next few days, a lonely reminder of the meal that was meant to be shared. Her next-door neighbor, a kind young woman named Clara, often felt a pang of sorrow watching Eleanor. Sometimes, Clara would bring over a plate of her own dinner, using it as an excuse to check on the old woman. "Mrs. Eleanor," she'd say gently, "that's a lot of food you're cooking. Why don't you let me help you?" Eleanor would just smile, a sad, distant look in her eyes. "Oh, it's no trouble, dear. They'll be hungry when they arrive. They love my cooking, you know." Clara didn't have the heart to say what she was thinking. She couldn't bear to shatter the hope that seemed to be the only thing keeping Eleanor going. So she would just nod, chat for a few minutes, and leave, her own heart heavy with sympathy. One particularly cold autumn evening, Eleanor was in her usual spot. The wind was howling outside, rattling the window panes. She had cooked a hearty beef stew, its savory scent a warm contrast to the chilly air. The table was set, the house was warm, and Eleanor was waiting. She rocked back and forth, her gaze never wavering from the dark, empty street. It had been an especially long time since she'd even had a phone call. A part of her, a tiny, fragile part, was beginning to feel the cold seep not just from the window, but into her bones, into her spirit. Was she just a foolish old woman? Had they forgotten her completely? She clutched the armrests of her chair, her knuckles white. Just then, a pair of headlights cut through the darkness, swinging directly into her driveway. Eleanor's heart stopped. She froze, barely daring to breathe. This had happened before in her dreams, but it always faded when she woke up. But this was real. The lights were real. A car door opened, then another. Figures emerged, their shapes blurry through the old glass of her window. Eleanor pushed herself up from the chair, her legs trembling. Her hand shook as she reached for the doorknob. She pulled the door open, and the cold night air rushed in, but she didn't feel it. There on her doorstep, looking older, more tired than she remembered, were David and Sarah. Behind them stood her grandchildren, now teenagers she hardly recognized. Silence hung in the air for a moment, thick with years of unspoken words. Sarah was the first to break. A sob escaped her lips as she looked at her mother, so frail and small in the doorway. "Mom," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. David just stared, his eyes welling up as he took in the scene, his mother, the hopeful look on her face, the warm light from the dining room where the table was set for them. It all hit him at once. The years of neglect, the missed calls, the broken promises. Eleanor's face crumpled, and tears she had held back for so long finally streamed down her wrinkled cheeks. But they were tears of joy. "You're here," she breathed. "You came. I've kept dinner warm for you." In that moment, the years of waiting, the loneliness, it all melted away. Sarah rushed forward, wrapping her arms around her mother in a tight embrace. "We're so sorry, Mom. We're so sorry." David followed, joining the hug, burying his face in his mother's shoulder. The grandchildren, seeing their parents' raw emotion, stepped forward too, adding their arms to the group hug on the little porch. That night, for the first time in a very long time, the house was filled with chatter and the clinking of silverware on china. The roast stew was eaten, the stories were shared, and the broken bonds began to mend. This story is a powerful reminder for all of us. Our parents and elders won't be with us forever. Life gets busy, it's true, but we must never get so busy that we forget the people who gave us everything. Don't wait for a special occasion. Don't wait until it's too late. Pick up the phone. Make that visit. The time we have with them is precious and finite. Let's honor them, cherish them, and show them they are loved and remembered, not just in our hearts, but in our actions. Don't let them become the person waiting by the door. Thank you for watching. If this story touched you, please like, share, and subscribe for more content that matters.